Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com. In Through the Looking Glass, Alice laughed. "There's no use trying," she said. "One can't believe impossible things." The Queen responded, "I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was younger, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." Through the Looking Glass was written 150 years ago. Now let's fast forward to the present. Here's an article from a few months ago saying that Vietnam was giving up new coal plants and was transitioning towards clean energy. Vietnam's COP26 commitments, a moment of truth. That was the propaganda intended for Western consumption, but back in the real world, the story is completely different. Vietnam is increasing their coal imports for the next 13 years. Vietnam's coal imports are forecast to rise to meet domestic production demand, according to a draft strategy for developing the coal industry in Vietnam, recently introduced by the Ministry of Industry and Trade. Now let's go back 8 years to 2014 when Barack Obama and Joe Biden made a climate deal with China. And since then, China's CO2 emissions have continued to skyrocket while the United States have continued to decline. In fact, China's CO2 emissions exceed all developed nations combined. It would appear that Asian governments are laughing at the foolishness of Western progressives. Now let's go back in time 15 years to 2007 in Australia. Professor Tim Flannery said that due to the burning of fossil fuels, Australia's reservoirs and rivers would never fill up again. The soil is warmer because of global warming and the plants are under more stress and therefore using more moisture. So even the rain that falls isn't actually going to fill our dams and our river systems. And 3 years ago, the government of Victoria ruled out new dams, saying climate change means not enough water would flow into them to make them worthwhile. Water Minister and climate prophet Lisa Neville says water in the state's rivers will halve by 2065, citing this forecast in her refusal to build even one dam. And now, 3 years later, the reservoirs in Victoria are filled for the first time in 28 years. Lake Eldon has 20 times as much water as it did 15 years ago, and Tim Flannery made his prophecy of doom. One could easily come to the conclusion that Western progressives are deluded and incompetent and have no business running governments. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that's all. Climate alarmists have no interest in facts or truth, the only thing they care about is power. And they will twist words and reality every imaginable way in order to obtain that power. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on these incredibly unethical people for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, Caesar, Toki, and Upala on the web at RealClimateScience.com.